came to win, I don't mean to offend. The greatest on the mic, mightiest with the pen. Losing never been a choice, but a line is the same. Ascending, word bending, burns, birth in the gym. Akin to the best, never aiming for less. Opposition so foul, got me calling for rest. Who's next to get bested? Mind, soul, and flesh is antithesis of mess. It's the pressure so clean. Hold on, you better catch a God throwing blessings. Dreams manifest, did you get what I mean? God always had a plan, he created for me.
Welcome to Knight&Craig. We got it right this time, Michelle. I wasn't
So
looking
good,
down.
so good.
Kind of camera frame. I left the stuff was on the floor this time. It's gonna stay on the floor this time. I'm not gonna mess around with it.
That
How
would
you
have been a
doing
great
today?
opening, though. It would have been a great opening, though. I'm like,
Oh I
hello
know.
there.
Oh,
Oh, we're on.
yeah. What's Robin Williams used to say? Hello there.
I
I love
love it.
Robin Williams, man. I still
Woo.
miss him. I still miss that dude, man. Well, welcome. This is week 2 or part 2, I should say, of Family Matters. And for those of you who were with us last time, we talked a lot about, just dealing with the issues of life with sticker shock. And sometimes
Mhm.
we start things and sometimes we regret after starting them. And sometimes with family and Family Matters, we have issues with our families that because they matter to us and we matter to them, but sometimes the issues we have, they really matter to all of us because we just don't really understand what in the hell's really going on with people. Good Lord, Shell.
You can't handle the truth.
I know. Because some
Yeah.
of my favorite matters in my life dealt around my family. And so, and like we talked about even before we started, there's blood family, right? And then there's family we love with intentionality and purpose. So
Yes.
sometimes, we can't always say, they putting all their family's business out in the streets. I actually had that one time with one of your family members that I know real good that
You know
they
what?
told me one of the shows I used to do, the Raising Men shows, like, you can't talk about our family and put our business out on the street. I was like, you know what? I'm a grown man. I can say whatever I want to. So there. But that is another thing, right? With family, it's how we really respond to people. What do you do? How do you deal with people that really, especially family, that really get into you and make you feel some kind of way?
Well, it's one of those things. So in preparing for this, we also talked about Family Matters Part 2, and
Mhm.
we were talking about sticker shock in the first one, and then we just left this one kind of blank and open. And I think that's while it might not have been our intention to do that, I as our conversation is unfolding even now, it's the crisis, it's the trauma, it's the death, the loss, the how we deal with X, how we maybe that's it. Family
Mm,
Matters Part 2, X, how we deal with X,
yeah,
because getting off that X, whatever that is a part of what we talk about.
yeah.
Um, but it's really taking a step back, and I'm careful. We talked about our words, being careful and all that. We're careful that the names that we are saying on this show are people who live within our home per se, or we don't want to. Our goal is not to make anyone feel uncomfortable in a way like,
No,
ooh, sit on the edge uncomfortable in that way.
no,
But we do want people to feel uncomfortable because we're talking about things
yeah.
in our lives that have happened. And I always say, you can't grow when you're comfortable. It's getting out of that comfort zone. It's getting in the seat that makes you feel uncomfortable to deal with some of this stuff, and that's really what we want to do is challenge. So today's conversation is going to be very interesting, talking about getting off of that X and the relationships and the how people respond to things differently. Even though we might have grown up in the same home, we might have had the same parents, the same experiences, if you will, or been witnesses of some experiences,
Mhm.
but we deal with those things differently. Our coping mechanisms, how we talk about it, how it shaped us, is all very different, and how that within itself can breed conflict. So I'm
And
excited.
I believe our styles change of how we cope over
Yeah.
time. I know because when you said that, that sparked in my mind. It's like, man, I used to be that real want to please everybody person. I used to be
Mhm.
excited for acceptance, and I used to really base my whole life on how people thought of me. And
Mhm.
when somebody felt some kind of way about me, it used to make me really, really, I mean, like depressed, sad, because I felt like I
Mhm.
had to always try to earn their trust and earn their love and earn their approval. And in our house, it felt that way from time to time because it wasn't always, if you followed, how do you say, their blueprint or their plan, We didn't
Okay.
always get a chance to do and come through with what we really wanted to do based on what was told, right? We were always told, oh, you can do anything. And,
Mhm.
and through with God, you can do everything, but you have to do, as I found out, you have to do everything according to their standard and their plan and their process
Mhm.
and being the parents and stuff. So that wasn't something I wanted to carry over into my parenting with my sons. And as I grew, I really decided, you know what? I can't worry about people, but it's not like I've lived my life that way. I'm talking about I've lived like the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years of my 54-year life,
Mhm.
refusing to care about what other people really,
Mhm.
and that for me can be a little bit lonely and daunting sometimes because it relieves you from some relationships.
Mhm.
And I get a little nostalgic sometimes when I lose a friend because I'm that dude. Like, if you're my friend, you're my ride or die. You're gonna be my ride or
Right.
die for life.
Ever. Mhm.
But I find that that's not the case.
Mhm.
Sometimes a death in a relationship, whether it be physical or just relational, I think
Yeah.
is actually good for both people.
Mhm. Mhm. Hmm. Interesting, interesting point there. Because I agree with you. I think this is the first time that we're agreeing on something like the exact same. I just had a moment. I think this is the first.
We're both brought a tear to your eye, huh?
Yeah, it's the first time we're agreeing like exactly on the same thing. Um, that relationship, the death of a relationship, it can be good for both people. I don't know why my light is doing that. Sometimes when I'm I don't know, that's gonna sound spooky. Um, you ever been in like a deep conversation with someone, you're talking about God or the Holy Spirit or, something that is beyond the realm that we live in, and then like a light flickers and you're like, okay, all right,
Oh,
I don't know what that means, but I must be on point.
yeah,
Um, so taking that only in the positive way. But anyway, the death of that relationship really is a turning point.
yeah.
It was for me in the relationships, both marriages and friendships, when I decided that this is not healthy for me.
Yeah.
I decided to set a boundary. I decided that I wanted something different. It wasn't, again, I say this in all humility and respect. I've never really thought that I was better than anybody. I
Right.
never, that was never my intent of breaking the relationship because you're bad and I'm good.
Yeah.
It was behaviors. It was behaviors that I were not healthy for me to be around and really weren't healthy for that other person. But they weren't at the point when they were ready to make a change. And that's something
Mm.
that I think about a lot. I must have been 2013 that it came up. And it was like people say, I don't care what people think about me. I don't care what you say. I'm gonna do whatever I want to do, yada yada yada. But the truth is, a lot of times we do care, especially if that relationship is important to us, or it is set up such that like a parental relationship is the perfect one of there's a level of respect that I'm supposed to give to my parents and honor them. But what happens when I feel disrespected,
Mhm.
or what happens to the kid who's didn't grow up with their parent, or their parent was exhibiting behaviors that actually put them in danger. So going back to 2013, my phrase became, "Do I care enough to change? Do I care enough about what this person thinks about me more than I care about what I think about myself?" And I think we kind of talked about that in one of the episodes. So I don't want to beat that too much, but it comes up here again because sometimes we have judgment around how people are handling things, challenges in their lives, and reverse that, it's reciprocated. Oh, you shouldn't grieve like that, or
Yeah.
you shouldn't
Yeah.
do such and such because it's not the way I would do it. And that's just not a fair position to be in, though it happens a lot in families.
Yeah, and I love what you said. It's a matter of respect, and I think I've I try to search my words carefully only because I want to make sure I use a specific language, right?
Mhm.
When we talked about losing a relationship, and I'll put that up in the banner a little bit. it used to matter and how it was lost. But I find now when I came back to me, right, when I really wanted to put that people pleasing guy that away and realize that that's just not healthy,
Mm-hmm.
it really showed that people were not being respectful. Because when you mentioned before about boundaries, the only boundaries think I used to live with was just the physical body boundary.
Mm,
And I think maybe that's not even right because I used to let people into my mind and play games. So maybe there really wasn't a boundary at all. I'm trying to be politically correct. I'm trying to search and
mhm,
find, wasn't there a boundary at all? But
mm,
when there isn't any boundary at all and you let other people have complete space in your mind, in your heart, in your life, it
mhm,
really puts them in a place where God should be, right? Where they become the ruler of everything that we do, and we don't let God have that place. So I think it makes sense how relationships get out of shape and those people become idols in our lives. And
mm,
when they stumble and fall off those pedestals and hurt us enough where maybe we get enough finally to tackle that pedestal and knock them off, you know, and we can really see that they live on the ground like we do, not like in a
mhm.
bad way, but we're all even, and God is the one that's
Human. Yeah.
elevated. I think that's the part for me. I had to do that with my dad specifically in terms of pedestal. I used to think my dad was everything larger than life, and
Mhm,
when he got sick and we spent a
mhm,
lot more time in the same place, I started to realize, hey, I thought you were taller than that. I thought you were
mm,
this, and then I started thinking, okay, wish I was a little bit taller. But not gonna go there, but it kind of helped me have an epiphany about how I had grown, not
mm,
even from the standpoint of stature, but it later
mhm.
became grown even at immaturity and as an
Maturity. Yeah.
adult. And
Yeah.
I'm really thankful for the time of actually growing for myself and not
Mhm.
relying on someone else to drag me along and tell me how I was.
Mm, It's a powerful point. You were talking about Uncle Johnny, and I immediately, of course, go to my dad. And as a daddy's girl till I die, I remember there was a pivotal point when he was sick, and everyone knew my dad to be this big, strong, virile man. Built the church single handedly, kind of a thing. He
Mhm.
can carry a 2x4 and throw it, and it goes perfectly in place, and the nail
Yeah.
gun is right behind it.
Oh, yeah.
And so all of those images of movies and cinematography and how that happens,
Yeah.
that was literally how I viewed him.
Yeah.
And when he was so sick, cancer, he decided he wasn't going to do chemo again. He's like, I did chemo for y'all, I did it for your mama, I did it for all 13 of us. And he's like, I'm not doing this again. And so I saw this moment of vulnerability
Mhm.
to admit that I can't do this on my own. I'm not saying I don't love or trust God. I'm
Right.
saying I have done a good work, and I'm ready for this work to end,
Yeah.
and go to my final resting place.
Yeah.
And I remember one day I was over after work, and he had come out the bathroom, and his not his underwear shorts, but the shorts that he had on, some khaki shorts. He always wore white t-shirts,
Mhm.
and he had on some khaki shorts. And as he was coming out the bathroom, his pants were falling down.
Hmm.
And he had gone from, solid 250
Yeah.
to, I don't know how much he weighed, honestly,
Yeah.
but those, you know 2X pants were
Yeah.
falling off.
Yeah.
And that was the moment that I started my grieving process. I
Yeah.
remember going home.
Yeah.
Me and the boys lived alone at that time. And I remember going home and crying and asking God just to help me, help
Yeah.
my family. I knew there was going to be another level of maturity and
Sure.
a stepping up in a different way that I needed to show up for my family.
Yeah.
Um, and not that I wanted to carry things that didn't belong to me,
Sure.
but sometimes that comes as a result of ownership. But I started that grieving process, and it was good for me.
Sure.
It was good for me, but it was difficult, and it was difficult to explain why at the funeral, or why after the funeral, after daddy's gone, why I'm not still crying, you know?
Yeah.
And people didn't understand that, and some people viewed that as, oh, she's hard,
Mm.
she's more logical, she's not emotional, but I had already processed it, and that wasn't for anybody but for me.
That brings up a point here. I'm going to put this one. This comes
Hmm.
early. Your influence versus their will, because,
Hmm.
and we talked before, even there's different levels of grieving, and even I'm not even sure if it's levels. We know there's the steps, right? There's
Stages, yeah,
half
the phase, yep.
stages. Thank you, that we have to go through, and at the same time, we grieve relationships differently based on the role the person who died had in
Hmm.
our life. You know, I used to always kind of, when Sandy died, I used to always tell people, or think to tell myself, well, why do folks respond to her death this way? Everybody make it such a big deal. They all just they grieving like they live with her. And so, because we even had a friend who used to, she used to call and say, hey, what are you gonna do with Sandy's old phone? Are you eventually gonna cut it off? Can you leave it on a little bit longer? Because sometimes I just call just to hear her voicemail. And,
Mm.
and there's nothing wrong with that. At the time, I was frustrated because I was like, look, I
Hmm.
was married to her. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You think I would be the one that gets all this, but then it took a minute, and where I really had to get with myself,
Hmm.
and through counseling and stuff, the counselor was like, hey, these folks loved her too,
Hmm.
but they loved her differently. So in the
Hmm.
7 types of love, I had a romantic love for
Hmm.
her,
Hmm.
and of course I had the God love for her, but they
Yes.
had
Mhm.
that sister friend
Right.
love
Yeah.
for her,
Hmm.
and they
Hmm.
had the God love for her. So the intersection of the two,
Hmm.
it showed itself broken in our bodies. Don't know the difference of the love that
Nope.
we experienced,
Hmm.
because it feels the same way.
Yeah.
And I didn't get that, Shell,
Yeah.
until well after Sandy had died, and I started to do a
Hmm.
lot of that work on me when I was hurt again by family and those that I loved close in a
Hmm.
non-romantic way,
Hmm.
and my body responded the same way.
Hmm.
And I was like, wait a minute, this don't, my brain is telling me, hey, they're not romantic and they're gone.
Yeah.
This is a loved one that I can still see, and they hurt me. But
Yeah.
my body, the pain and all of the
Yeah.
feelings were
Yes.
identical.
Hmm.
And that's when the light came on. I was like, huh, I had to finally use my influence
Hmm.
over myself
Over yourself. Yep. Yep.
versus, and so I can stop dealing with their will of over my life. And so
Yeah.
when I finally got to that point, so it's when I believe that my grief cycle shifted,
Hmm.
and my
Hmm.
healing process
Hmm.
actually began.
Hmm. Yeah. When we were talking about this before, and I brought this up, as you know, we were comparing the physical death versus divorce, which
Mhm.
I have an experience with, and so I was sharing that when a person, not in so many words that this happened to me directly, but this is probably a better example, where someone tells you, I don't want to be with you.
Yeah.
I don't want to be with you. In my case, it was behavior that was toxic and not healthy for either any of us to be in that relationship. Full
Mhm.
circle conversation, going back to the top, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't, I forgot that I was not in control. I do have control issues. I've worked on them. But I can't control this person
Yeah.
that I'm in relationship with.
Great.
In that case, it was a marital relationship,
Yeah.
but I have no control over my friendships either,
Yeah.
meaning to control them to make my will their will. No. And we have the perfect example of that through our relationship with Christ. He's like, you got free will. You can do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but there's still a path, and there's a designation of where we're supposed to go and what we're supposed to do. And we use our free will all the time. I'm not doing that,
Yeah.
delaying ourselves, and that was the end result of staying in those relationships longer than I needed to, is that I delayed my own self. I delayed
Right.
my own progress. I,
Yeah.
I delayed the progress of the family that was, within my home, that I was leading and having true influence over. the same thing happens with our kids. They get a certain age, and it's like you raise them up, you taught them what they need to know, and then they at some point they have to make the decisions for themselves.
Yep.
And so this physical versus relational death also, sometimes people are like, well, yours is different because that person is still here. And I'm like, and that makes it better?
Right.
No,
Right.
it actually doesn't. Sometimes I don't wish that my ex-husbands died, but I'm saying sometimes I think that depending on the relationship and the relationships that we had together, of all the people that are around, it would almost be better to forget, or it'd almost be better to have that physical death.
Yeah.
Maybe they think the same thing about me. I don't know. I'm just being real right now. To not have some reminders, some
Yeah.
physical reminders, or some relationships that are still trying to be mended or suffered from the loss of those relationships. So then I had to become intentional about wading through which of those relationships were really important for me to keep and which were not. And so in that case, it was compounded death. It was compounded grief.
Wow.
It was compounded, because I had to figure that out as well. What was my life now that this person is no longer in it, in that role that they have always played?
It's funny you use that term compounded death.
Mhm.
I'd heard that before in the counseling sessions,
Mhm.
and it didn't make sense when they first said it. But as they started to walk through it and talk through it and help me understand that it's an adding on, a layering of, and in some cases been multiplying of the
Mhm.
pain that was felt, but from different ways, different perspectives that aren't always the same or even
Mhm.
congruent or fit
Mhm.
into well together, to use a different term. And when we are dealing with people and their influence over us, going back to that same point, if we allow people, I mean, and I'm not saying we don't listen to wise counsel, so I don't want to give that
Oh,
as a
absolutely.
perspective
No,
for
no, no.
people. And
Yeah.
because I lived that life for a while when I turned my back on people because I had been hurt by
Mhm.
the death of Santa. I had been hurt by family that
Mhm.
decided to do whatever the hell they wanted to do. And
Mhm.
and they were hurt too. And that's just how they responded to me. And I took it some
Yes.
kind of way. So
Yes.
I'm not gonna put them on blast and say, well, look what they did and be a victim. Because I lived that victim life for a
Mhm.
while, waiting for, looking for, longing for, pissed off for, mad at God because he
Mhm.
didn't rescue me. He didn't send someone to fix every problem, mend my heart, mend my kid's heart. So I closed up the drawbridge and
Mhm.
dug the moat around my family's heart and my life
Mhm.
deeper and wider because I said these words with my own mouth that I'm not gonna be hurt again. I'm not gonna let nobody
Mhm.
hurt me ever again. Friend, family, you name it. I give them
Mhm.
the finger up and I'm done, you know.
Mhm.
But that became a lonely life for me.
Mhm.
But I said, I don't need no help. I can do it. But it became a lonely life for my kids,
Mhm.
where some of the people that they were still cool with,
Mhm.
I wasn't cool with anymore.
Mhm.
But I would always tell them, well, hey, if you wanted to have a relationship with those people, it's going to be up to you to foster. I'm not going to foster it. So if you want to talk to whomever, excuse me, call them. Don't just call them when you want something from them.
Mhm.
Or don't do like they do with us when they won't feel like being bothered with us or they need me to do something. They call.
Mhm. Mhm.
Keep that relationship going. Now, I find that finally coming to pass in their lives, but I think it's more because they're older,
Mhm.
right? Versus because when their mom died, they were like what 4, 6, 9, and
Really.
10, or 4, 6, 8, 9, and then Shane was just turning 18.
Mhm.
So it's different in their age groups.
Yeah.
And but I enjoy the fact that it's happening.
Mhm.
But I also believe that some of it had to do with my level of being the grizzly bear around them, where some of the
Mhm.
folks were like, ooh, I don't want to deal with that crazy,
Mhm.
so I won't deal with them.
Mhm.
Because I had heard somebody say that just a couple of days ago, you know.
Yeah.
And we have a mutual friend that we've talked about before off air, where I really enjoy what they do, what they bring to the table, but I'm just not willing to deal with that level of with their crazy right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I own a lot of why my kids have been isolated from loved ones.
Yeah. Whew. There's so many things. Okay. Pull it together. All right. So you're talking about how people cope and how that's different from you.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if when we get to the point where we understand that we actually do cope differently
Hmm.
and make that a conversation, I'm wondering how quickly we could get to forgiveness,
Mm.
even if we don't get to reconciliation.
Oof. 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 You can't say them deep topics when I'm in mid swallowing my juice, because I almost had a drowning moment. I was gonna need the Heimlich maneuver in a second. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know how to do that virtually, but when we start
Just keep
doing
pressing on the
shows in
screen on the
person,
camera. You know, just keep pressing the camera. Ooh,
ah,
ooh,
ah, stand alive. Okay,
yeah.
that's
Ooh.
CPR, not the Heimlich, but yeah, I, ugh, because sometimes I know I'm grieving, I know you're grieving, but I'm taking your grief as my stuff. I'm taking that on, and that's not my job. Our job is individually to
Yeah.
communicate where we are.
Hmm.
And if no communication is happening, then I'm only looking through my lens of my hurt, my pain, and what you should do, which is judgment based
Right.
on what I would do,
Right.
without understanding that you don't even your experiences, your lived experiences have not lended itself, even though we grew up in the same home, even though we're talking about the
Mm.
same family member, even though we suffered a loss, it does not lend itself to have the same capacity,
No.
nor vice versa. I don't if we walked a mile in anybody's shoes for real,
Yeah.
it's not flickering on my end. It's only showing up here. But anyway, if we really walked a mile in somebody's shoes
Mhm.
and understood from their perspective, even the blessing that happens on the other end. My friends were not trading places with me on my first and second divorce. They were not trading places with me when I lost my job. They were not trading places with me when da 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 da. They were not trading places with you
Mm.
to lose their spouse, the mother of your child. They were not trading spaces, but there was so much judgment about how we were going through whatever. And maybe I've done that in the past. When I went through this last time, I was like, I don't care what anybody else do.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go through what they have to go through to get what they're gonna get.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be compared for what I have
Yeah.
to what you suffered,
Yeah.
because you will not trade places with me.
Because I didn't want what I had. I ain't gonna trade it. Because what you had was for you. It may have looked better, but this I know what I have sucked, and I wouldn't trade it because I know I would not have wanted someone to go through my suck.
No, and you don't want to go through the type of suck that I went through,
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
you know?
Because
So we
because what's funny, when people look at the suck,
Mhm.
they see it as something different. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Tell
Because
me
when you're
more.
because when you're we don't ever get the full story in a
No.
person's life, even if we
Mhm.
live with them. And that's one thing I know,
Mhm.
and you know this too. I mean, but it's one thing for me. I got the epiphany when Sandy was dying that you don't ever get to know a person except for what they show you about themselves,
Mm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And people are like, what do you mean? Sandy was a great person and blah blah blah. Some of our friends that watch this episode and kind of feel some kind of way. Here's a for real example. I was in her hospital room and she just breaks down crying when I came in the door and sat down. I'm like, what is wrong? What is,
Mhm.
like, what is the problem? And I'm thinking, oh, it must be bad news from the doctor. And I already knew
Mhm.
there was already bad news, but I'm thinking there must be something extra.
Mhm.
So here I already had my story,
Your assumptions. Yep,
my
your story
assumptions
going.
playing out, and my
Mhm.
judgment, right? Because we have
Mhm.
judgment on both sides. people
Mm-hmm.
judging our lives, and we're judging those people who are judging us about how
Yep.
they're doing it. So my judgment for her was the situation was, oh, doctors, that's why she's crying.
Mm-hmm.
Her story as what she could articulate to me, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we are not able to always articulate our pain to
Mm-hmm.
people. So even
Mm-hmm.
as you had mentioned before, even as we're communicating how we are to people to set that boundary or the right expectation, and we talked about it, I think a couple of episodes back, about where are we at today, how much you got, how much I got, okay? But she was seeing her mother the night before, and she had gone to meet her mother at the
Mm-hmm.
fountain in front of the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know, okay, when my wife died, she was immobile. She couldn't stand. She couldn't walk unassisted. So she wasn't
Mm-hmm.
going down to the fountain in front of City of Hope Hospital to sit with her mother. And oh, by the
Mm-hmm.
way, and those who do not know Jean Huff, Jean had already been dead several years. So her
Mm-hmm.
mother wasn't coming to visit her, and they were not going to sit by the fountain unless
Mm-hmm.
it was a prophetic moment in a dream state that was
Yeah.
reminded her, Sandy, that it was time for her to leave this place.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
so it's so much easier for us to sit in judgment of someone else, of their situation, because we don't ever know the backstory, and we
Mm-hmm.
are so quick to say something or make up a story. And the Bible does talk about we should be slow to speak,
Mm-hmm.
slow to anger, right?
Mm-hmm.
But quick
Mm-hmm.
to make, so those who want to finish it, finish on their own. But we have a responsibility to be quick in our listening.
Yes.
And a lot of
Yeah.
us fail to do that.
So this
Mm,
came up for me while you were sharing, and I recall a time we were talking about, would you go to someone's funeral
ooh,
that
yeah,
you that you didn't respect or like or whatever. We there's difference in the love of the Lord, and you have to get to this place of
sure.
reconciling with yourself where you
Mhm.
are. um, uh, but that still having a scar or a wound that's really deep.
Yeah,
The body's always trying to figure out, how do we heal, how do we heal, how do we heal
yeah,
naturally, because that's the way we're naturally physically made. You
sure.
get a paper cut. I had a splinter, and literally got it in the 99-cent store, and I was touching a piece of a wood back scratcher, and splinter went in my finger.
Yeah,
And I opened up got some tweezers. I didn't have any tweezers of my own, so I got some tweezers, bought the tweezers, tried to pull the thing out, thought I had gotten it all out.
mm,
Finger swell up, and then I noticed that it started rejecting it, because after a couple days, because the body was trying to heal itself.
mm,
But that was a splinter. That wasn't a heart wound.
mm,
That wasn't a car accident. That wasn't um, a broken leg or what have you. And even then, if you don't tend to a broken bone,
yeah,
it will heal, but it will not heal properly.
yeah,
And sometimes we need help to heal.
yeah,
Um, we need help to heal because we can't do it on our own. Going back to Sandy for a moment, and the story of what she was seeing, and your judgment around that, um, your immediate judgment around that, of what was going on, and her sharing with you was her way of preparing you
mhm,
for what she was experiencing.
yeah,
Even though maybe it didn't sound right. It didn't She may not felt like she articulated it correctly, but
sure.
the message was, she was transitioning and
Yeah,
she was preparing you. So my point is that as we're on our healing journey, we may not get the words right. And
yeah,
in this case, her healing was a final resting place of no more pain, right?
yeah,
We may not get the words right, but there is still a level of responsibility that if we plan on having a relationship with someone,
mhm,
this is coming up because I know there's a couple conversations, Craig, that you said you didn't have because you're still in your assumptive state,
yeah,
assuming what you saw, what you thought,
right,
or what you heard. was the whole story, and sometimes it's not. So
Yeah.
there's a piece that we're missing when we don't have that other side
Yep.
of being able to heal even from a hurt that we have received.
And it's bananas because I love the what's on the bottom, the banner there says some wounds have a deeper scar, because there's some folks that we love harder or love more in a relational love, family love, or even romantic love, right? Where you know the drill with that splinter, either you had to dig out some of the healthy tissue
Mm-hmm.
to remove that splinter,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes even the manner in which the splinter or the wound was inflicted tore out parts of our body
Mm-hmm.
that our body, yes, is doing its best to heal. And like you mentioned, sometimes we need help, because if that wound is left unattended, it's going to leave an indentation. Some of us have scars on our bodies to this day. Ryan's got one, you know, my middle son, to this day, because he was jumping on the bed, he fell off the bed, and it was a little twin bed, and you know, some of these twin beds have those metal rails at the bottom. He flayed open his shin, and it was like, it was huge, but it wasn't huge enough for me to think I should have taken him to the doctor. At that point, my backstory, right, was people go to hospitals and they don't come out.
Another story.
And I couldn't take him to the hospital because if I kept him out of the hospital, he was going to be all right. I couldn't lose him. That boy wound up having, I put tape on it, I put whatever I could to pack it. It wasn't bleeding. It was just
to the meat. Yeah.
And it took so long for that wound to finally get to a place where it closed. But it's, even to this day, it's not the same volume of meat and skin and tissue there.
Yeah.
There's an indentation that's left. Versus had I taken him to the hospital right away, right, and let the doctors work on him, they could have stitched it up, and we would have had a better opportunity for him to have had, though it would have left potentially stitch scars, but it wouldn't, his flesh would have been more even. Never would have been perfect again. Would have been a lot better off than I left that open wound.
Why we like this? Okay. When I was 5, I was being hard-headed. We were having a circus in the backyard, and you know, our house was the neighborhood house, so all the kids were back there. Maybe this is why I don't like popcorn to this day.
I'm gonna make me a popcorn shirt next week. Watch.
I wanted that popcorn. And my brother was like, no, you're not getting the popcorn. Long story short, I climbed up on the boat, slipped off, and hit my head on the edge of a cinder block, busted my head open. And blood's coming down. I remember crying. I probably put a little extra on it too, but I was in pain. But my dad came out there and like grabbed my brother. My brother is we're 5 years apart. He's so loving, but he used to torture me. He put me in the dryer, y'all. I'm okay though. He was always like, let's do acrobatics. Let's do this. Let's do that. But anyway, this time it was me. So, but my parents remembered, you know, all the times that we were playing. So grabbed me, took me to the hospital. They cleaned it out and they gave me a shot. And I remember I was so scared I didn't want stitches, but the doctor was kind of laughing with me. And I remember like it was yesterday. And he did the injection, numbed the area, and then used a different syringe and was cleaning it out. And I remember hearing like this shh, like almost like a jackhammer. You know, I could hear it going cleaning or whatever. And so I ended up getting butterfly stitches. My point in doing the comparison of the stories is that it healed properly, right? It healed properly, as did Ryan's leg. It healed. You never the same because I have a scar. But at the end of the day, as I grew older, as I matured, as I learned what not to do in the future, that scar actually got smaller.
Mm.
The scar is still there. It's accompanied now by a blackhead, but it's still there to this day. But as I matured, as I grew, as I stretched,
Yeah. Yeah.
it got smaller.
Mm.
My point in that is we all have an opportunity when we address things,
Yeah.
when we allow our bodies to heal, whether we have help or whether, in your case, the trauma of what you had experienced kept you from doing it by a societal standard.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
didn't take your baby to the hospital, but what you did worked. It's
Yeah.
also a sign that everything that we need is already inside of us.
Yeah.
We have to activate it. We have to call it out. And you know how I know you've grown? Because Jackson got hurt playing football and you took him to the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Facts.
You took him to the hospital. It took
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to give ourselves is time to process, time to grieve those relationships, those conversations that maybe you might be kicking yourself now going, why didn't I just ask that question? It wasn't time for you to do that.
Yeah.
And there's another thing. You didn't take everybody into the hospital room.
Mm.
You cannot take everybody into the hospital room with you.
Nope.
Whether you're getting surgery, whether in your case or my case, the hospital is grieving after the fact, you cannot have everybody there because we're opening ourselves to contaminants. We're opening ourselves to toxins that will further delay. We can delay our own process, but if you get sick, then the process of trying to recover from being sick, COVID, you open your house while you're quarantined to other people, you're going to prolong that healing process.
Yeah.
So you're right where you need to be cognizant of the boundaries that you have set, to be cognizant that your moat bridge is now, extended, even with what we're doing.
Yeah.
You're allowing me to cross over that bridge. You're allowing my family, our families to fellowship together because it's time.
Yeah.
We've never had issues, but not that I'm aware of.
No, you're good. We're good.
But we never had any issues that I was aware of, and I never thought that we did. Right. But through conversation, we've gotten to the point where we can now, through our own experiences, you said this, that in the same place of your pain was the same place of your greatest support, and that is truly the family unit.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to promote on this, is that in the same place where you were hurt, is it time to have conversation? Is it time to get support, to deal with the crisis, to deal with the trauma, to deal with the pain, and start living in your purpose?
Yeah. And I think for everyone that's listening, if you even heard any of thing that we said, this is the piece to carry away, because it goes back to what Michelle even said too. It doesn't always mean reconciliation. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where some of us stand and go, "Ooh, I'm never going back to that person again, forever, ever, never, never, no, never." But you don't have to physically go there. Mm-hmm. But mentally and in your heart, you've got to be able to go there, because you know the stories that we're carrying and we're making up in our own mind and heart. We can't worry, like you mentioned, the control. I have control issues too. I can't control what anybody else says about me from the people who I'm not in community with. I can't do nothing to control anything about anybody who's I am in community with. Mm-hmm. I can't even control me.
That part.
Mm-hmm. So, but I have a better opportunity to make change and influence over my choice and my decision. So to your point, when I see these people again, or if they call, or if I am led to call them or reach out to actually have a physical conversation, if I don't work on my own spiritual and mental place and my love with Christ, and deal with my own forgiveness of them and of myself for my part and how I responded to their part.
Yep.
The sin is always going to be with me. So I'm going to be judged for how I responded and how I acted I can't deal with them, and I can't even be like the old folks. You say, "Oh, what is it? Was it vengeance is mine? I will repay. Thus says the Lord." Well, I know the Lord ain't gonna say anything to them that I'm ever gonna be privy to. I'm
That's
only
right.
gonna hear what he has to say to me, about me,
Absolutely.
for me.
Yep.
So I gotta do like the other folks of the church used to say, "Just get right, church, and let's go home." Because if I can't get right, my home gonna be a hot place.
Yep.
I ain't got time
Yep.
to go to hell with them gasoline draws. I just ain't got time for it.
And roller skates.
In Rose Gates.
Absolutely. My dad used to say that I am only responsible for what I do.
Yeah.
Period.
Period.
Period. If they want to talk bad, if they want to do this, if they want to do that, that's on them.
Yep.
I don't have to reciprocate that. I don't have to indulge. I don't have to even share it with anybody else, even if I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It will take care of itself, but I have to be right.
Yeah.
I have to be right.
And that's the tough part, though, too. I always want to get my turn, and I always want to be heard. I always want to get the last word, and I was that last word dude, because I was, we used to, when we talk about it, folks, back in 100 years ago, we used to call it basing on each other. Now the kids talk about capping or whatever. They think they've made up a new word, but it's all the same. Welcome around. But I'm to the point finally in my life where I don't have to say nothing to nobody. I don't have to have the last word. If that's what they want to think, it's better for me to walk away from a situation than me keep talking. Because if I keep talking, it's gonna make my Agent Orange act up.
And listen, and here comes Tyrone.
Man, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah.
And I ain't trying to call him, because if you have to call him and use your phone, it's not
Ain't gonna be good 2 times.
No.
I'm gonna put this up here for you because you said this, and now I gotta find it.
And so what she's looking
Where
for,
is it?
we call it in our pre-production planning meetings or strategy meetings, we have some of the key points that we'll talk about, and we'll put these in a little spot on the side for ourselves. Oh yeah, that's that part
That's
right
what
here.
you're talking about.
Turning the other chink is defensive and offensive. Now, some people may pronounce the word offense as offense.
Offense. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you have, it depends. So I'll make sure we clarify here, because it has both meanings apply here. And I put it on,
Sports works.
you know what I'm saying?
But the sports analogy works for your original intent.
True. Well, no, that's not true, but it is true. I actually really mean as offensive in terms of being negative to a person, and to your point, offensive as an opportunity. Because with what I said, it was like, yeah, I'm gonna give you my left cheek first.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, I took a wisdom. I'm gonna give you my right cheek first because I'm right-handed. So I'm gonna let the lower side. I'm gonna give you this cheek first. And if you're stupid enough to keep hitting me on my cheek and doing me dirty, I'm gonna give you the left cheek, because if I give you my left cheek, it means I get to put my right foot back.
Jesus.
And if I put my right foot back, that means I get to have my right arm back. So if you keep messing with me, I'm gonna come back with that right. It's gonna come across your face. So my defensive mechanism.
So well. We were doing so well to
I'm
be on the
just
same
saying.
page.
I'm just saying. Now it's gonna become offensive, because I'm gonna be now I'm gonna take an offensive position, which, and my offensive behavior may be offensive to you, because they just don't. The folks who've hurt me, who I'm dealing with, and maybe some people overall dealing with, they just think it's their way and their position or their right to keep treating us a certain kind of way. They realize that they don't have the right at all to say nothing.
Yes.
Freedom of speech notwithstanding. Because free speech ain't free.
That should be a shirt. A former, how do I want to say this? A mother figure in my life told me, she said, if you continue to argue that's exactly what that other person wants.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, they want to respond
When
to
we're
that.
talking about, offense, or being offensive. So sometimes silence is an offensive and defensive position as well,
Yeah,
because I'm not going to sit up and argue with you about your perspective. I understand your perspective, but
yeah,
we don't have to argue, because I don't have to necessarily agree with your
right,
perspective, and I don't
right,
have to apply your perspective
right.
in order for us to even be in relationship. I don't.
Yeah,
So the power of what this is saying too, of the defense and the offense, from my perspective, is we don't have to be offensive. If someone takes offense to
hmm,
us, we don't, that may not have been our intention. If the impact of that is the same, going back to that,
yeah,
and we know that, then we have an opportunity to clarify that, because
yeah.
I don't think either of us are saying you just go around, being mean and rude to people.
Oh
But
no,
you're
no, no,
talking about, in terms of these relationships that
no.
are in turmoil,
Right, 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 right,
that are contradictory to the intent that we would want to have with this person,
right,
that there's an opportunity,
right,
um, to address that in a way that they may not appreciate, but it may be the boundary that you're setting. And
right,
through that boundary, you have another opportunity, if you choose to forgive, to have a conversation about forgiveness, and then figure out reconciliation with yourself, and figure out the new boundary that you want to set, if you're going to invite that person back in or not. Did I get that right?
No, no, you got it. Because I
Okay.
think when we're dealing with people and turning the other cheek gives us an opportunity to hold our tongue and not say
Mhm.
nothing and let
Mhm.
cooler heads prevail, so to speak.
Got it.
But when my dad was alive, you
Mhm.
always had to watch out more for him when he got quiet
Mhm.
because he
Mhm.
was that dude, right?
Mhm.
If I'm
Mhm.
still talking, we still having an argument, that's never cool because that means that there's still emotions invested in the situation.
Mhm.
When I and we go back to this a matter of respect, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Once I lose respect for a person,
Mm.
it's a wrap. There's nothing else I need to say to nobody
Mhm.
because if I feel as if they've lost respect for me,
Mhm.
I can turn both cheeks. I could put my right foot back and never hit them, right?
Mhm.
Because if I'm gonna put my right foot back, that means the left foot back is going back too, and the right was going, and that means I'm moving away from that relationship.
Got it.
And I can then treat you with a long handled spoon and still be in community for it. And at some point, pray for forgiveness of myself, pray for forgiveness of you,
Mhm.
bless that situation to keep on and love them with the love of the Lord. But I don't have to love you from a near,
Mhm.
I can love you from afar.
Mhm. Mhm. And people hear that sometimes and they think, "Gosh, that's not love." Actually, it's
Yes, it is.
self-love.
It is.
And it's self-love, and it is a form of respect,
Uh-huh.
because why would I want to be, I'm not fake at all. Oh gosh, this reminds me of a conversation I have with my mom. It's like, "Well, you should do this, or you should do that, or what do you think?" Trying to get me to move in a way that she wants me to move with particular
Sure.
people. And I'm like, I told you I'm done.
Sure.
I'm done. I can be more respectful. I can be more respectful by honoring this boundary and not pretending to be something that I'm not,
Mhm.
because I'm clear on where I am. I don't hate that person.
Right.
I don't hate that person. I don't respect what they've done, and they might be doing something different. If that's the case, then I want to imagine that. I don't want to be in a position where I'm going back to what you were saying earlier, putting them back on this pedestal, or putting them back in this place of reverence or respect for something that I no longer believe in.
Yeah.
Period. So no, I'm not going to invite them. And if that makes you feel uncomfortable, then you don't have to come either. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with having multiple parties. All my friends are not in the same friend group. All
Right.
of my family members are not in the same space in that group as well. So I'm
Sure.
okay. I'm cool to kick it over here, and I'm cool to kick it over here. And if it means that we can all kick it together, then that's great. But what I'm not going to do is violate myself to make you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
But that's where a lot of folks don't get it, because it's so much about them. It's the the me, beating their chest. What about me, Chef? It's all about me. And it's not. It's about, like you said before, it's a self-love. It's how are we able to make sure that we're healthy and we're
Yeah.
whole and protecting ourselves with the proper boundaries. I love your home, how it's clearly, the perimeters can clearly marked off with where
Thank
you want people to stay away,
you.
right? Now,
Could you
from
say
a
that positively where I want people to be?
okay, let's say it that way. So the perimeter is clearly marked out where you want people to remain inside.
Yeah, I got
Better?
you. Yeah.
So, but from a commercial, from a city planner perspective, there's still more of your property that you own, that you got the title deed for, that's
Absolutely.
on the outside of those boundaries. And
Mhm.
that's where I think it's key. There's certain places where we let folks into our life up
Mhm.
until a point that's safe. Okay, now granted,
Mhm.
in your home, your property, you've got a lot of vast space, right?
Mhm.
And there's a road alongside, so the boundary is going to keep people inside off the road. And then there's a part of your property that goes down a hill into a deep ravine. And so you don't want to have people on your property that you want to be there to venture
Yeah.
out being without being safe down into the ravine, because you may not be able to hear them call for help if they should fall or when they should slip and fall, and the
Mhm.
dogs may get down there, and they may not be
Mhm.
able to get back up. And there's a safety first perspective. Your
Mhm.
husband, is a SEAL, right? And he understands fire safety and those kind of boundaries. And even when we're out with Steve, there's a certain boundary that Steve allows people inside to get close to the families, you specifically, Caitlin specifically, the boys in the family.
Mhm.
But often I think people really don't understand that there is a boundary there, even if there is a fence.
Mhm.
They
Mhm.
think there's always a gate that's open for them. And there's
Mm.
not always a place where people have right to come
Access.
within access to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Even if
Yeah.
you're at your home right now, there's the front gate has a handle that can be opened from the outside.
Mhm.
But there are people who really shouldn't touch that.
Yep.
But we don't always tell them, don't touch it.
Mm.
That's why when you get then inside of your home, the doors are locked. So should
Mhm.
a person decide to come inside of the barrier, the boundary,
Mhm.
there's a spot where there's another boundary that's locked
Yep.
that you've got to give them permission to. And I
Yep.
encourage people, as you continue to go, and we're going to continue to just go on this. I think part two, Sheldon, we have to turn into part three. There's a lot we didn't cover.
So,
Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
a lot we
There's a
didn't
few
cover.
things. A few
But I
things
hope
more.
people know what and are helped from this.
Mhm.
Um, because we really need to continue to help ourselves with this, right?
Mhm.
Have other people. Any last words, Shell, before we sign out for this week?
I wanted to applaud you on the permission and gate access analogy. I think that's really powerful because sometimes um, my mom, I'll use this analogy. My mom had a key to
Mhm,
our old house.
mhm,
She lived in closer proximity.
mhm.
She would pick up the kids often. She had a key to that house, but she
Sure.
does not have a key to this house
Mm,
because of the distance,
yeah, yeah.
because of, and I'm using this analogy. I don't have any issues with my mom in
No,
this
no,
way.
no, no, no.
But figuratively, we take keys away because of distance. We our
Sure,
relationship has changed.
sure,
Um,
sure.
you kind of need to know where you're going to come out here now. So the direction to gain access has changed. Our home is different. The layout is different. The setup is different. The kids are a little older. Their needs have changed. So as you're thinking about what I'm saying in a relationship way, we have to protect the access.
Mhm.
we have to be open to give permission where there's needed, if there's a purpose for that. My mom also went through something recently where she had to change her security codes.
Mm.
We changed ours too, but she changed her security codes because someone moved out
Sure.
that no longer needed access. And that code had been the same for a long time.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. The person came back to the city and the relationship was not good when they left. The person came back to the city, didn't tell her that they were coming. They didn't come to the house, but it just so happened that a mutual friend mentioned to my son, hey, did you know that such and such is in the city? So they would have had illegal access, but permitted access prior that they could lean on, even if they wanted to do something that was illegal or that was not appropriate. So think about that with your relationships. Who has access to you? What permissions have you given them in the past that they may be still operating under? You need to go back, or maybe even not go back, but you need to set the boundary, change that for yourself. So when they come knocking again or using that key, then you're empowered to tell them, no, things have changed. So.
No. And with that, we'll see you all next time. Join us again for Knight&Craig. Looks like we'll be continuing this conversation. Either way, we're in Family Matters, right? We'd already set this up to be a multi-part series. Keep joining us for more. We'll see you next time on Knight&Craig.
Absolutely. Take care.
I came to win, I don't mean to offend. The greatest on the mic, mightiest with the pen. Losing never been a choice, but a line is the same. Ascending, word bending, birds, birthed in the gym. Akin to the best, never aiming for less. Opposition so foul, got me calling for rest. Who's next to get bested? Mind, soul, and flesh is antithesis of mess. It's the pressure so clean. Hold on, you better catch a God throwing blessings. Dreams manifested, you get what I mean? God always had a plan, he created for me. Success only